Welcome to a new season of Keeping It Real, a weekly podcast to inform our Dallas residents about Dallas city services, events, and initiatives. Thank you for joining us today. My guests today are District 9 Council Member Paula Blackmon and District 7 Council Member Adam Bazaldua. Welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, TC, for having us.
Thank you, TC, and thank you for introducing District 9 before District 7, too.
Listen.
It's age before beauty.
It's age before beauty. I appreciate y'all coming on. So listen, today's episode, serious topic, want to have a conversation about better understanding fentanyl and the opioid strike force that you guys established to really have some serious conversations about this epidemic that's going on in our country and in our community.
Yep.
So let me start. Either one of you can begin. What is the mission of the Fentanyl and Opioid Strike Force campaign?
The mission is to bring all parties that are working on this issue together to find solutions for our communities. When we were talking about OD mapping, when we were talking about communications, when we were talking about funding, opioid funding, it was a very fragmented discussion. And people were not coming together to talk through it. And so we went, I think you were at that Kansas City NLC meeting, and I think there was like almost 10 of us from the city of Dallas at a opioid fentanyl discussion. And Bazaldua and I came out and we had this like, we've got to bring people together. We have to do something. And if other communities are doing it, Dallas can too. And it was literally at the bar after that discussion that we just started saying, who needs to be at the table and what are the topics that we need to work through? And I think we've gotten some really good early wins. We've created a communications program. We are working on OD mapping. We got data to our public health authority. We're working to get communities their information. So it was, the mission is to bring people together to find solutions around this epidemic.
And speaking of that, Councilmember Bazaldua, well, who's participating or which organizations are you partnering with?
So I think that this is a lot of where our head was and why we wanted to create the strike force was it's really an open door. And it needs to be with all entities. Right now, we're working with the county, with DISD, with all of our first responder agencies, DART, our district attorney, just about anyone that you can think that, in fact, a couple of the meetings we've said, we need to add this person. We need to add this group. And it should be that. I think that what we see often in any governmental efforts is different departments working in silos. And you've seen it time and time again. And this was one of those that more of the consistency with the messaging and making sure that we're all going towards the same goal, but we also are tailoring it to different audiences. I mean, this is an epidemic that is touching all populations, and it needs to be addressed as such. The fentanyl crisis in our schools with our youth is definitely different than what we are seeing with our adults who are recreational drug users, for instance, and it's being used in prescription pills to street drugs to everything that you can say. So this is the need for comprehensive approach and robust discussion that is going to require participation from everyone. If we were doing our thing and all of those other entities were doing theirs, not only would it not be consistent messaging, but we're really missing the mark on putting our resources and power together. I mean, this has been something that, because of the power we have behind us, getting airtime for the campaign donated to us, working on legislation down in Austin that has legs that we should see actually pass this session. That's something that our district attorney's been working on for a while. So just by getting everybody in the room and on the same page and towards the same goal has already shown to be effective.
In TC, we also want to look at the individual that's experiencing this overdose and may need help in getting the assistance, and that family the assistance that need to. So it's not just looking at enforcement, but looking at working through the individual's needs to get them what they need to recovery.
And I'm proud of DFR, actually. They came very early on with a solution for an overdose response team, similar to our Right Care is the best way that you can talk about it. But this just goes along the same narrative that we've been trying to reimagine public safety. And it's not about enforcement. It's not about coming down on the individual who is probably experiencing some type of substance use disorder. It's now more about educating and working with their support system at home and giving the resources needed so that it's not about a vicious cycle that we're just going to perpetuate.
Well, tell me how fentanyl overdose is affecting the Dallas community, and can overdose of fentanyl be prevented?
So I think that it's more about mitigation. I don't know that we're ever going to see it go away completely. What we can do is make sure that everyone's educated on how prominent it is. This has come so rampant that, from 2021 to 2022 statewide, fentanyl usage increased by 89%. What we've seen with the administration of Narcan in our city went from, it increased 200% year over year, and then almost 1,000% the following. And that's just showing how critical this is and how fast it is happening, which is why it's important for us to be very proactive and aggressive in addressing it.
In my district alone, we've administered Narcan 300 times last year. So there's 2 zip codes that we've looked at. So it's in communities. And, is illicit drug use going to go away? Probably not, but we can give people education and methods in which to make sure that any drug that they are using, and it could be a Xanax that they think they're buying off of Snapchat, or an Adderall to get ready for finals. And so what we need to do is make sure that individuals have information and the tools to make better decisions, and to understand what chances are being taken when you buy that pill, from a Snapchat.
And I think that's also important to emphasize that if we approach this knowing that the answer isn't to get rid of illicit drug use, that's an unrealistic goal. But if we have tools that are out there like fentanyl strips that we are advocating for at the state, and we're hoping fentanyl testing strips, because there's been an argument for a long time that that's in a sense something that condones the use. The reality is the use is happening. Mm-hmm. And if we're not allowing for individuals to have something so that they can make sure that they're not about to take a deadly dose, if we are not making sure that our city facilities and all of our different departments are equipped with Narcan so that we can respond in an effective way, we have to use what we know from this crisis and make those resources available. It's just not realistic to think that any effort we have are going to end drug use as a whole.
Got it. Listen, let's take a step back. We talked about the strike force. We talked about the partners. We talked about people really working on it. Let's just get back to the basics. What is fentanyl? And what can you share as it relates to the types of things that can help prevent an overdose associated with it?
So fentanyl is actually an opioid. It's a synthetic opioid that there is a legitimate use for fentanyl in its normal form pharmaceutically. The synthetic version of it is what has been mimicked. The fentanyl is used to get people out of anesthesia, and you will see it used literally regularly at the hospital. It's the synthetic form that is essentially equivalent to what we saw with the heroin crisis that came up. But it is so strong, and I'm sure you've heard of the taglines like "one pill can kill." That's literally what it means. This synthetic use, just the tiniest amount, is added to these different pills just to get people hooked, so that they come back for that drug dealer's business model. But that's what it is. It's a synthetic form of a pharmaceutical that is actually used on a daily basis. I saw a reel of somebody coming out of anesthesia, and he was like, how do I? It was a young kid, and he was like, man, why do I feel this way? And his mom said, well, babe, you're on some drugs, and they're just trying to help you ease out. And he said, well, what is it? And the nurse listed a couple things and said fentanyl, and he like sprung up from his bed because of the crisis and how aware young people are starting to get. And she had to explain, no, it's the good kind, you're fine. But he was like, why'd you poison me? And seeing that video, actually, to me, although there was a funny aspect to it, it was eye-opening, because his reaction as a young kid, and I taught teenagers, they don't always think things are that important, and it was very clear that they have been aware of what's happening.
And TC, it's coming across our borders in small but potent quantities. So you could get a small brick and it could be used for millions of pills because such little is needed. And they manufacture it here, or they could manufacture it over and bring it back over through. But it's very inconsistent. So one pill could have 10 molecules, while another has 1. And so it's inconsistent, and they actually can change the compound as they're making whatever pill they're going to be distributing. So it's very the intent is to get people hooked, because we have come out of an opioid, if you remember, from the late 2000s with the prescription drug, and that never really left that need to have that drug. And so there's that void that's being filled, plus then, hey, let's just put it in some pills, and they're getting this euphoria that they've never had before, and they're chasing that. So it's a pretty easy way to make a quick dollar, because you don't have to grow anything, because it's all synthetic. They bring it in, manufacture it, cook it a little bit, and so they don't have to crop that they have to deal with. And it's easy to transport.
Wow. Listen, so we talked about the drug itself. So what can prevent death due to an overdose? What's out there to do that?
Well, don't take an illicit drug. But that's not. But the just say no method doesn't help either.
But is there a medication? I think you mentioned Narcan.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can. So the testing strips are the big way, because they're actually finding it in cocaine. So you can get testing. Well, not in Texas. We're hoping to change that. But testing strips that if you are using a drug that you've purchased off the street, to test it, just to make sure that it's in its pure form of what you said you bought. In the case that you don't have the testing strip, there is Narcan, which can be administered through your nose, and it actually brings you back, if you will. It neutralizes the effects, and that has become now over the counter. FDA has allowed that to be to be sought after. But as Bazaldua said, we want this in every place that we can get it, in first responders' hands, libraries, schools. And we want eventually people to have it on their keychain, like they have anything else. The spray, the pepper spray. But because you never know when. It's really hard to say, but you never know when you may need to use it.
Yeah, and the Narcan is actually extremely interesting of a drug. There's absolutely no adverse impact. You don't have to have a training to administer it. This is something that is literally, it looks like Flonase that goes up your nose. But if you happen to not be on an opioid, it's not going to work. It doesn't have an impact to you. There is no side effects that are at all concerning. It works to actually block the receptors of the brain that opioid attacks and gives that euphoria. And without that happening, they literally come out of being on the substance for a short period of time, and it allows for other measures to be taken at the hospital. But with that said, I do want to touch on one thing that Councilmember Blackmon mentioned about Narcan over the counter, we still have work to do there. And I think it's important for people who are listening that if you are planning to have some at home as a safety precaution or just prudent measure, you need to have a couple of them. It's only been approved at an FDA level over the counter at a lower concentration. That's almost a false sense of security. And I would encourage anyone who's going to go that route to have it at home just to be safe, to have two at least, because more than likely, because of its concentration, you're going to need to use both if you ever get into that point. It's not like what we are able to get for government entities. So that's an important piece. But I also want to say that this is a larger conversation. And now when we see legislation to allow for Narcan use widespread, funding at the state level, consideration of taking away the fentanyl testing strips from being a misdemeanor, this is a conversation to me that is also broader about the taboo of substance use. And now we're approaching it in a more compassionate manner. And in many fronts, as soon as things start hitting more affluent demographics, you start to see more of an urgency to address it. This is nothing different than what we've had on our streets for decades. This is nothing different than the war on drugs that plagued just specific communities. But now we're approaching it with compassion. We're approaching it with prudent and pragmatic measures. And that's something to me that gives a little bit of hope in us having the ability and the resources as a city to address the crisis that exists on our streets.
Well, tell me what the next steps are and what activities are you planning for awareness out in the community? I know this podcast is a great start to share information, particularly on our TV station that the city runs. But tell me what the Strike Force or you as council members have planned for awareness.
Well, we have to continue to have a robust education campaign. And again, as I was saying, it's going to look different for different demographics, but that needs to be blasted everywhere. It doesn't need to just be on billboards. This needs to be in every single school. It should be on every single mode of transportation that DART has. I think that in all of our city facilities. And the campaign, if you haven't seen it, has been it's really pulling the heartstrings. It's bringing the reality into the issue. It's making you aware of the fact that this does not discriminate. This is something, just as Councilmember Blackmon said, is not just in the pill form that we're seeing with young people a lot of times because they have to go get them from a black market source, but also recreational drug use. I mean, we've seen, there was several weeks ago, a few attorneys up in New York City that were using cocaine recreationally going out on the town, on a Friday night, and all three of them died. And so it's something that I believe we have a duty as a city to make sure that it touches all of those demographics, that it's tailored to all of those demographics. And we have to just continue to bring that up and work with the partners on the strike force to see what we can do together.
So we still have the legislature still in session. We need to get those bills across the goal line. Yep. We need to then look at how we're going to utilize the opioid funds that are coming through to really focus on strategies using data and focusing on the communities that it's hitting hardest. And really going, I think, getting very, do we need more mental health in the schools? Do we need to help families? What is going on in there that is causing the drug use that is hurting, individuals? And so I think we bring to the strike force issues of the day, but we're also looking long term. And so we're really looking to use data to help develop strategies, working with our partners to look at our homeless population, what is going, and also enforcement. I mean, drug dealers are, preying upon individuals, and they may not even know it. They may think they're selling something else, so they need to understand what's going on as well. But enforcement and also looking at what we can do to curtail the use and what can be used in that regards as well.
Well, listen, all three of us are parents. And so, as I often say, I like to keep it real. And so I'm going to close with a couple of questions. One, as a father, tell me what you would say to the children or any kid listening right now when it comes to fentanyl and the dangers associated with it.
I will tell you that I try to shy away from that just say no message. I think it's important to educate, and that's our biggest task, I think, as parents, is to make sure our youth are educated. And the reality is that we know that at a certain age, things are going to be experimented with, that decisions are going to be made. But as long as we equip the youth with the knowledge that they need to know, because those decisions shouldn't be made with ignorance. And that's what you ultimately see. But when you are able to educate a child and explain to them the dangers, the concerns, the realities, the stories that are out there, I think that it puts perspective in that decision making that we have to count on our young people to make the right ones. Again, the just say no method and just the thought of the only answer is to get illicit drug use completely out is just unrealistic. And if we spend all of our time and effort and resources in that regard, we're going to miss a lot of people along the way that we could have educated and helped them make the right choice.
Well, Councilwoman, as a mother, I'm going to turn it to you. Tell me what you'd be telling other parents, what they need to be paying attention to, and what should they be offering to this conversation.
Well, leading to what was said about giving information, it's sitting you down with the child and telling them what is really happening out there and saying we can work through this together, whatever it is. If it's, we have kids and grades are important and the pressure of grades and, they're tired. I need an Adderall. No, you don't. Yep. We can work through this. Yep. It's not that important when it comes to your health and your life. And so I say to the parents, have that conversation today because tomorrow may not be here. There's no guarantee. So do it today. And be understanding and don't judge them because they're just kids. They're looking to us for guidance. So we have to be their guardian.
Well, listen, as you know, I tend to not use the word crisis, but this is definitely a crisis that I think the community needs to stand up and pay attention to. I want to thank you, particularly because I know you've led on this issue. The strike force and the campaign wouldn't be where it's at today without you two speaking to that.
Thank you.
And so really speaking truth to power, spending the time we're doing down in Austin, talking to our parents, talking to our kids, your other colleagues, I think it's been very important. And it's raised the attention of this because it is a serious issue. Mm-hmm. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you for participating today. Thank you for showing up today.
And thank you for your staff and leadership on this. We're giving us great individuals to work through all these issues, and it's easy and fun when, well, I don't want to say fun, but it's a lot easier when we're all rowing in the same direction, and we appreciate that.
Well, definitely. Thank you.
I'll say thank you to you too. Your commitment to public safety unconventionally has been something that I've always enjoyed watching. But the quickness that DFR came with a solution, and I just a heads up, when budget season comes, we're going to need to be expanding that a little bit. But
I'm hoping
I
it's
appreciate
because it's a success.
Exactly.
It's sad that it's needed, but if it's working, then we should fund it.
Yeah.
Well, listen, we followed that playbook before with Right Care. We've
Right.
expanded that. That has helped so many people in our community. I see this as the same example of the pilot and then moving it more broadly. Again, one life is worth saving.
It is.
Thousands is tremendous. So
Absolutely.
listen, thank you
Thank you.
again.
Thank you.
Thank you for being on my show, and come back soon.
Keep it
And
real.
Yeah.
There you go, keeping it real.
Keeping it real.
All right, thank you.
Thank you,
and
TC.
have a good day.
You
All
too.
right.